Hi everybody, welcome to Mailbag Monday for December 7th, 2020. Today is a very, very special edition of this program because somebody wrote to me this weekend, one of you guys out there, and asked if I had tablature for Jingle Bell Rock because you wanted to play it with your husband who knows it on the guitar. And unfortunately, I don't have tab for Jingle Bell Rock, but I told you that perhaps I will do a Mailbag Monday on this and show everybody kind of what I figured out. And it's such a cool, fun little tune on the mountain dulcimer, as I've discovered, that I think I will end up tabbing this out one of these days, but it's probably not going to happen this year. But I can kind of show you how I've been working through it. And I just started messing with it, I guess it was sometime during the day yesterday. And I looked at it again today and listened to the original recording made in 1957 and thought, you can make this happen. You will need to have a 1.5 fret for one particular chord and melody note. Other than that, you can get by and make this whole thing happen. So that's a really important note and a really important chord in order to get the groove of the tune all the way around. And this is also kind of going to be a good look at seeing how I make an arrangement based on a tune that I already know. And as I've mentioned a number of times, the easiest way to make your own arrangements is to internalize the song. If it's a song that you're actually reading off a piece of paper, it's really difficult to get it out there because you want to be able to hum every part, hear every part in your head, and then kind of audition those melodies and bits and pieces of the tune all over the fretboard. You also want to be able to hear the chord progression. And one of my tricks for figuring out what a chord is when it's moving is to listen to the lowest pitched note that you can possibly hear in the tune. And normally, 9 times out of 10, that's going to be the root. That lowest note is going to be the root of the chord. So once you find that root note, you can then build your chord up from there. So without any further ado, let's take a look at Jingle Bell Rock, starting off with that fun little intro. So you can actually do that. And we're starting off by doing a partial D major up here. We're not going to play all the way through. We're just playing at the 10th fret and at the 9th fret. I'll take my index finger down to the 9th fret. And then I'll come up here again. Thumb will get at the 11th fret, down to 7. And at this point, you can ride both the melody and the middle string. And I lied, you need the 8.5 fret for this too. So again, coming from here. Then you can walk that parallel motion down to the 8th fret, down to the 7th fret. And then at this point, we'll go into that familiar slant partial chord shape at 6 and 5 to get our partial G chord, and then continue on down to 5 and 4 for our partial D chord. Not really a chord, it's an interval we're looking for, and that's all we're doing is a melody and some harmony going with it. So again, that's and we're off and running. And when you're doing songs like this, it's really important to get these little bass runs and passing tones and melodies to put them all together, and that will help you find where the chords are going as well. So, melody starting at the 7th fret. I'm going to go ahead and walk through the melody first, and then we'll take a look at the chords that go with it. So we're going to go. All the way down to F sharp. Okay. Right there is where you're going to, of course, need that 1.5 fret to catch the blue note that's happening there. That's going to be involved in something really interesting here in a little bit. So we'll continue on. All right, so that's the first part of the tune. Now we're going to get into this next part here. Normally about this time, halfway through a tune, I'm just like, whew, got all the melody notes. And normally if you have all the melody notes, you should have all the chords. It's not always the case, but largely that's the case. And we're going to have to fudge some chords here, but it's pretty easy to do with this tune. And then we go back into our main theme here. Okay, this is where it's going to get tricky, because we have a chord that we don't have. We have a note that we don't have. We're missing a B flat when we're in the key of D. So we're going to have to bend the melody string at the 4th fret to get this next part. Now, it's kind of hard to bend when you're close to the nut or close to the bridge. And I've already found out through the chord that an easier way to bend this, we're bending A. We're bending A upwards a half step to get A sharp. A sharp is the same thing as B flat, and that's what we're missing. So all you have to do is look for an A. Here's an A that's going to be a lot easier to bend because it's right in the middle of the fretboard. So let me go. Bend that note towards you, and then hit the 7 next to it, and then all right, now we've got all our melody notes, and we have our cool little intro. So the next step is to go ahead and marry those melody notes with the chords. And so largely we're hanging out on the melody string, so we're just going to be piecing in on the middle string and on the bass string the other 2 notes we're going to use. Your cute little walk down there with the bass, you can use that in all different types of tunes. We're going right into a D major chord, so we'll be Now right here, if you're following along with the tune in your head, which by the way was recorded in D major, you know that the bass, the D on the bass, goes up a half step to D sharp, and then it goes to E for the E minor. It's a cool little way of voicing a chord and then having the bass line tie it all together. So it would be bum ba bum 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 ba dum bum. So we're going D, D sharp, E. So obviously you don't want to be trying to bend this bass string in the middle of everything. So what we're doing is we're going to play the chord that is going to normally have that note in it. And that's going to be B major. B major typically is going to have B as your root note, D sharp as your middle note, as your third, and then it's going to have F sharp as your perfect fifth. So you know if we bar across the 5th fret, we're going to have a B5 chord, which omits the third. So there's no D sharp in here, but we do have F sharp on the middle string. We do have B on the bass, which is all we need. So if we were to move that without worrying about that half step walk up, which sounds cool, we'd be going from D to B5, and then we could very easily dump down into 3, into E minor, right from that B5, which is where we're going. But see, that little bass walk up is telling you basically where those chords are, what the root is. Even though D sharp is not the root of that chord, D sharp is a part of B major. And so it's kind of things like that you need to be thinking about for some of these more complex tunes. We can always drop a note out and the effect will still be there. So we've got our So what I would do is I would come in only as far as the middle string, because F sharp is the melody note at that point. And the funny thing is that right before we go to the E minor, the next melody note is A, right? So actually, let me think about that for a second. Yeah. Here's where everything moves up to the B, so we go, and that's why we're only coming across as far as that middle string. Okay, and then there's that note leading out of the F sharp, that's A, which if we're still hanging on to that B, which we are, we should be, because we haven't gone to E minor yet, that actually creates a B7 chord, which then goes very nicely to the E minor. So once again, walking that together with the chords, only as far as the middle string, then pick up that A on the melody string, and then what I would do is play this shape of the E minor and go, or and then what we're doing is we're changing position of the E minor from a slant down to an L to get that nice low bass there on the E, and also we're keeping our melody where it needs to be there at the 3rd fret, playing that G. Instead of going down to E minor, we're going down to A7 at that point. So I'm playing a 1, 2, 3 chord that gets our melody at G, and it also gives us C sharp and E. So we are basically playing part of an A chord, but we've dropped the root out and we're playing the dominant 7th, the flat 7th interval there, and that's giving us that, and our melody is doing it for us. And that's what a lot of people, composers, will do. Instead of specifically saying just play a D7 chord, to make a really interesting melody, if they have a D7 chord, then they'll go ahead and or an A7 or a dominant 7th period. Instead of using one of the main notes in the chord, the 1st, the 3rd, the 5th, or the root, the major 3rd, or the perfect 5th, they'll actually use the dominant 7th as part of the melody note, or whatever note's being added to that chord. And it makes for really cool stuff. So we're down at A7 at this point. It's going to bounce back and forth between E minor and A7. Now at this point, the melody's getting up this way. And then it's going to go down here, and I'll show you how we handle that. But after all this bouncing back and forth between E minor and A, I would come up and do this E minor, and then we get into our what is it chord. First, we know the melody we're playing is going down to the F, so we come out of our E minor slant. We have F natural, but what the heck is this that I'm playing? Well, take a look at where my fingers are at, and you'll see that if I take that F down to E a half step, I'm just playing a 4-2-1 A major chord. The root of the chord is on the bass string, A. The major 3rd is the C sharp on the middle string, and then the perfect 5th is the E on the melody string. So we haven't gone into this yet during the special Dulcimerica series. It's going to be next week, talking about augmented and diminished chords. An augmented chord is a major triad with a sharpened 5th. That 5th, perfect 5th, is actually augmented. It's raised up a half step. So we can take that E, move it up to F, and you get the mysterious and beautiful augmented chord. And that's what's happening there. And the augmented chord is a great way to go from the 5 to the 1. It makes a fabulous resolution. It's really powerful. So some songwriters will use it as a very ultra dramatic way of getting back to the 1 chord, which is what's happening here. So from the top here, and then we go down into our, here we go. Bounce back and forth. And then we can just get back into our groove here. So I'll go back to E minor here. Follow that bass. It's A we're going to. So if we're moving up, we can go to a 4, 4, 6.5. Melody goes down to the bar here. And then we're back to 7. And we can do our partial harmonies there on the D major. Next stop. It's going to be interesting here. I believe here we are going to bum, jingle bell time, dum. It's a G chord we're going to here. We're going to the 4 chord. So we know we've got B here and we've got G here. And so we can go dum bum. Next, Lord, it's going to be an E. But it's going to be an E major chord, not an E minor chord. Luckily, because of the 6.5 fret, we can actually play E major. It's all going to be right there in that neighborhood, which works out perfect. Then we let go and go back to D. Then we go back to our E major. Down to A. Now there's some business that's happening in the background there. Giddy up, jingle horse. Pick up your feet. Jingle around, bum, bum, bum is the next part that comes down. So if the chords are hanging out with D, jingle up, pick up your feet, da-ba-dum. So we're going dum, down to G, down to C, down to B. We're back there again at B. So at some point, whether you want to try and incorporate those passing tones or not on the bass line, you're going to be moving to B after this. So and that would make this next move with the melody here at the A, that would make this a D7 chord because we've got the C natural there on the bass, we've got the A, D, F sharp, A, and that's kind of how we're moving. So if you think about the movement of the chord going from D, da, da, dum, dum. It's voiced a little bit differently than you would if you're using it just going chord to chord. So that time you can go all the way across the 5th fret because our melody is on the melody string. Bum ba dum. That bass note is G. And this is where it gets tough because we're going G, the major 4, or not the major 4, but the 4 chord, and then we're going to a minor 4, which is kind of hard to do on a mountain dulcimer. You need to have everything to be in the right key, and then you also need to be able to make that 4 chord a minor chord. And there's ways to do it with the 1.5 fret, but not in the key of D. In the key of C, you can do it. So what we're going to do here is we're going to fake it. First of all, if you're playing it with somebody else and they play the chord, you're good. You could probably bend the note and get away with it. But if people are relying upon you to play the chord as well, it might be a good idea to drop some of that chord out and just do the melody, because we can get a B flat. So we're going to go, and because the melody is here going up, you're going to want a G major chord shape that's going to be close to that as opposed to down here. So I'm going to do that walk down again. And right there, I'm using 7 and 8 on the melody string. And then you can get in there and bend the A at the 7th fret to get A sharp. Same thing as B flat. And when you're done with it, just lay your finger down on that 7th fret. You'll get your next note. And then your next note's going to be up here at 8. Then it goes out. It bounces back and forth between E minor and A major at that point. So you can either go, because our melody needs to be where? And if you want to keep it right there in that same region, then we'd look for E minor and A major here. Starting off with E minor, we can just simply go, let's do this. We'll start off here with the 3, 4, and then 7. Bring the thumb down to 5, and then come up for an L-shaped A major chord. Thumb can walk it down, 5, 4. Then you'd come in on 3 and 4, bass and middle. You're playing the support for the E minor chord. And there it is. So I'm just going to walk through it nice and slow from the beginning, starting with here. Here it is, down to E minor. And it's something like that. So just, to give you an idea, if I were going to be taking that song and wanting to arrange it and perform it, which I now do, and I expect that by next year it'll be part of my repertoire. But you can see where you kind of have to think through the process, find your melody, find your chords, and then you have to smooth it out, how you're going to get from place to place, how you're going to make all this stuff work and get it up to speed. So don't beat yourself up if you're not playing this in a couple of weeks, just like the record. In fact, I would suggest holding off trying to play this along with the record unless you just want to change chords. That's cool. But don't go too fast with it, because then you're just going to be practicing mistakes, and that's not a great thing to do. But take your time and kind of go slow with it. And if nothing else, play the melody by itself, and that's easy. Play the chords by itself, that's easy. It's when you're trying to put them both together and have each support the other, when you're first starting off, that can be very, very difficult. So do take your time with it. And I expect at some point that I will have tablature for this, outlining what I just played there, maybe even finding some improvements upon this. I've only been messing with it for about 24 hours, so we will see what happens next. But there you have Jingle Bell Rock for you to mesh with here, and I will be back next week. Thank you for the email, even though it wasn't specifically a Mailbag Monday question. And if you have any questions that you'd like to see up here on a Mailbag Monday segment, just drop me a line at bingfutch@yahoo.com. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.